Greetings, cross fans, and welcome to the penultimate Laatste Ronde of this winter. I'm Marty Mac. Thanks for joining me. I can't believe we're saying that already. Us cyclocross fans, we get that kind of reverse seasonal anxiety disorder, don't we? Because we're all like, I just like it in the winter when it's just cold and wet and snowy and a little bit dark. So if you're a bit like me and you're not looking forward to the end of the cross season, we're here for you. We're like a little support community. We'll keep each other going until next winter. Hope you've enjoyed the last couple of weeks across. I thought I'd have a little chat about the World Championships this week. I was away in Turkey at the European Track Champs last week. World Champs in Holst. What an event, what winners, what champions, what worthy champions we had. Leonie Bentfeld in the women's under-23, winning out against Victoria Kladanova. And I think for anyone that's followed Leonie through her sort of junior years where, you know, she was up against Zoe Backstead constantly, and you could see over the last few seasons just the way Leonie's improved. But I think it's a lesson in just dedication, determination, and how much she'd improved. And I think watching her just absolutely nail those descents was a real credit to the amount of work that she has put in over the last couple of seasons, and a well-deserved under-23 winner. In the elite women's race, we came into it, didn't we, with Lucinda Brand nursing that calf injury that she'd had the week before. And Holst, it's quite a heavy course to have any kind of calf injury, just because of the way you have to run banks in cyclocross where you're up on your toes, which is just activating your calves all the time. But what battle to see Puck Peterson go down though, really heavy. Puck was absolutely smashing it, wasn't she? And I think it was great to see her come through and get the bronze medal. Great battle between Ceylin Alvarado and Lucinda Brand. But I think looking at this season, such a deserved world champion in Lucinda Brand, taking it for the second time in her career, and I think a kind of crowning glory in her career in a way. And we hope that Lucinda's going to keep going for years and years, because she just seems to get better and better every winter, doesn't she? But I think looking at the season that she's had, how dominant that she has been, only once off the podium yet again, and that was that 10th place in Maasmechelen, but a really well-deserved world champion, and she'll carry those stripes with pride. In the elite men's race, unless we were going to kind of have a Stranger Things upside down kind of world, Mathieu van der Poel was always the nailed-on favourite, wasn't he? It was going to be an absolute disaster day for him if he wasn't going to take that 8th world title, and he's done it. In men's cyclocross, no one had ever won 8 titles. He was level with Eric de Vlaeminck going into it. Marianne Vos has won 8 in women's cyclocross. But for Mathieu, whenever he's been interviewed over the years, he would always say, oh, I'm not chasing records. I'm just out here and I'm enjoying racing. But you know, a big champion like Mathieu van der Poel wants those big records. And he's done it. He's got those out and out 8 titles. And it was just, again, something to behold, watching the power that he was throwing down to get up those banks, and hopefully his winter and the prep that he's done over the course of this winter will really stand him in good stead going in to the road season. And if you watch as well in the elite women's race, Zoe Backstead that we talked about moving up, stepping up into the elite women's race. And I said in the last show, a top 10 would be a really good performance for Zoe, especially given that her broken wrist and the problems that she had coming into this winter. And 7th was a really great performance from Zoe. And she then hopped from cyclocross over to the UAE Tour to take 3rd in the bunch sprint behind Lorena Wiebes just a few days later. So it just again shows just how much cyclocross does in terms of prepping riders for the road season. I think looking at Mathieu van der Poel, looking at the power and looking at how good he's been this winter, I think he's really yet again going to be a force to be reckoned with come the classics. I mean, who doesn't love watching Mathieu van der Poel and Tadej Pogacar just trading blows in the classics? But it did Mathieu van der Poel's 8th title, it again raised that age-old question of, is he the greatest cyclocross rider of all time? And I would love to know your thoughts as well. But Het Nieuwsblad interviewed Roger de Vlaming, so Eric de Vlaming's brother, and Roger de Vlaming himself was an incredible cyclocross rider, and he won, I think he was saying 512 races he won in his career, and we're talking the sort of Eddie Merckx era of racing. And when they asked Roger de Vlaming if Mathieu van der Poel is the greatest cross rider of all time, he replied no. In certain terms, he replied no. And it is difficult, isn't it, to compare decade to decade and era to era in terms of who is the greatest. And I just think the attributes of Mathieu van der Poel and the way he wins, he's definitely up there. He's got those 8 titles, and that was what de Vlaming was arguing, that you can't just put it on titles. And Eric de Vlaming, if you don't know, I thought, what would be the word? What would my mum say? Slightly wayward in his life, and he was retired. He was done by 28 years old, and that's what Roger de Vlaming said was, how many more titles could he have won? But that is a massive what if, isn't it? I mean, we all love Mathieu van der Poel. He's the greatest of all time of our era. Definitely, because most of us don't remember sitting back and watching those races back then. Don't let my hair fool you. I would still not back then. But hey, Mathieu van der Poel, 8 world titles, absolutely incredible. I loved watching the Worlds. It was a real joy. It's been a great cyclocross season. And I think in the elite men's races as well, we've got to look, and I think the future is really, really bright. Looking at Tibor Del Grosso and Thibaut Nace, I think the future of cyclocross, and if you add riders like in the men's race, Niels van der Putte into that mix as well, I think we've got a really, really bright future. I think we've got some really, really exciting years to come. And I think in the elite women's racing this year as well, we've seen a real emergence. Sarah Casasola is just getting better and better. Amandine Foucanet coming through in the way that she has. Zoe Backstead being able to have a clear run into an elite winter, which we hope she will have next season. Those sort of riders, Victoria Kladanova, who's coming through, Kristina Zemanova. We have got a really, really bright future. Winter Olympics has started, Milano Cortina, and I was just reading an article on Vidaflits that said that because we were having issues with some of the winter sports not wanting cyclocross to come in, their worry is that federations like the UCI and the IAAF, because they're trying to get cross-country running into the Winter Olympics as well, is that they will want to take revenue from the Winter Olympics. They are saying that they are happy for sports like cyclocross and cross-country running to come into the Winter Olympics if the UCI and IAAF agree not to take any revenue from it. So it's fine by me. They got, come on, we need the Winter Olympics. And some riders, I was reading again on Vidaflits, it's a real go-to for me, the riders like Mathieu van der Poel really in favour, and there's some riders as well that aren't. But getting into the Winter Olympics for certain federations, especially for Great Britain, because cyclocross is arguably independently funded. We see riders coming through, it's small teams, it's families that are funding the careers of riders. Being an Olympic sport will change the funding pathway within a lot of federations. So it's got to be a good thing. And I think it will really help expand and internationalize the sport. So watch this space, folks. Hopefully we get an agreement that come 2030, we'll be there. Last weekend, we saw the conclusion of the Telenet Superprestige Series, and it was tight in both the elite women's and the elite men's. For the elite men, Michael van Turnhout and Niels van der Putte, a great battle between them. Niels van der Putte looked cool. He looked calm. Michael van Turnhout and Gerben Kuipers, the two Pauwels and Outers industrial battle riders out in front. Michael van Turnhout took the victory, but Gerben Kuipers, for me, what a rider, reborn since he signed for Pauwels. And I think for him, if he can have a good final weekend and then have a great summer and come back next winter, I think we're going to see even more big things from him next winter. Niels van der Putte ran out the winner of the Telenet Superprestige Series for the second time, and a real well-deserved winner. I've always been a fan of Niels van der Putte. I just love his style, of the way he rides. He's got that very cool, very calm, very fluid kind of style on the bike. In the elite women's race, going into it, there was a chance that Amandine Foucanet could close on Annemiek van Alphen in first place if Van Alphen had a bit of a shocker. But perhaps we may not have expected it. It was definitely not as close as the elite men. But on the day, Foucanet out in front really set a charge. And Annemiek van Alphen, who started the season so strongly, but really at the back end of the season is perhaps showing that fatigue. And you could sense the sort of panic and frustration creeping in as the race went on. And you could see that Annemiek van Alphen, who rides for Seven Racing, you've got Creelan Corendon, who are part of the Roodhoff brothers setup, along with Phoenix Premier Tech. Inge van der Heijden was ahead of Annemiek van Alphen, and we came in on the last lap and we saw that Inge van der Heijden was then behind Annemiek van Alphen. Coming into the finish, Foucanet taking the victory. Van Alphen crosses the line and that puts them level on points. And it's been so frustrating this season in the Super Prestige Series for us as commentators, because the coverage literally ends about a minute after they crossed the line. We didn't even get the top 10, and we certainly didn't get the general classification. So we knew they were level on points. We get a race manual and a road book for each event, and going through that, trying to find the separation if they were level on points. And as it came into it, going 99.99 times, the winner of the most races runs out the winner. In the Telenet Super Prestige Series, if they're level on points, it is the rider that has the most starts that takes the overall victory, and then they take into consideration the number of victories. And because Annemiek van Alphen had started one more race than Amandine Foucanet, she took the win. And it's one of those things that's just going to run and run, I think, in terms of how it happened, what those points scored, or how they scored the points. It's entirely up to them. It's their series. They decide who the winner is going to be and how it's going to be decided. But the winner, most starts, took the win. But you can't take anything away from Annemiek van Alphen's season. She has had a great season. It would have been amazing for cyclocross for Amandine Foucanet to also take the series overall, because we have never had a French winner of the Telenet Super Prestige Series. So I think that would have been a good thing. Looking ahead to the final weekend, it is the Exact Cross from St Nicholas on Saturday. I'm on that one. And then it is the final round of the X2O Bikecommers Trophy from Brussels Uni. It's one of my favourite crosses. That is on Sunday. In terms of the elite women, Lucinda Brand is 13 minutes ahead of Manon Bakker. Joris Nieuwenhuis is leading Niels van der Putten by about 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Looking the way Joris is going at the moment, it'd have to be an absolute disaster of a day for him to lose that. I'll be back next week for my final show of the winter. Thanks for joining me. Have a fab week. Enjoy the final weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.